Good afternoon, and welcome to the first virtual OAFP Wellness Week. Today's theme is professional wellness with a focus on system-based wellness initiatives. I'm Mary Krebs, a family physician from Xenia, Ohio, and a member of the Joy of Medicine resource team. I'm happy to be with you today. While navigating the hardships of the last 18 months, family physicians have continued to serve their patients and communities, oftentimes putting their own comfort and health to the side. It's no wonder so many physicians are in survival mode. We recognize that efforts to address burnout are usually focused on the individual. However, it's a twofold problem that exists in the work environment as well as for the individual. From administrative burden, difficulty finding work-life balance, feeling undervalued, frustrations with referral networks, governmental regulations, and of course, reimbursement issues. Many times the physician's stress and burnout isn't of their own doing. In an effort to support members during this time of transition, the OAFP is leaning into its strategic priority to bring joy back into the practice of family medicine and providing a full week of wellness delivered directly to each member. Throughout this week, members will receive daily resources and information on a wellness theme. Hopefully, you've received your professional wellness one this morning. You choose how to interact. You can engage in the content immediately or revisit when you have the time and space to do so. There are also 4 live sessions scheduled this week on a variety of wellness topics. To get those started, we have a discussion today on system-based wellness initiatives, what they are, how to get things started, how to implement, and lessons learned along the way. Our hope is to provide each of you with at least one action step you can take back to your institution to start making necessary change. With me today are 2 family physician OAFP members that have been on this journey with their systems, Dr. Lori Hamam and Dr. Mike Holliday. I'm going to turn it over to each of them to introduce themselves and provide an overview of the work they are doing, and then we'll open up to questions from our live viewers. As you listen along, please feel free to share any questions or comments in the comments section under this video wherever you are watching. Also, please include any comments or your own best practices or ideas. We'd love to see them. Use the space to connect and share with each other. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Holliday, who will get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Krebs. I appreciate the chance to talk about this important topic. So as you said, my name is Mike Holliday. I'm a family physician at the University of Cincinnati, and my present clinical and administrative role is in University Health Services. So we take care of college kids here at the UC campus. And I serve as a medical director and also one of the clinical staff. I got involved with and interested in this idea of joy in work and system-based changes when I myself struggled with burnout. I shared my story last night at one of the bite-size meetings with Dr. Sevilla. And as I shared last evening, went through a hard time, and I just had to sort out, what was going on, what caused that. And I realized that there was my own individual things that needed to be attended to, my own resilience issues, but there were a lot of system-based issues as well. And while there's a variety of very individual needs that that physicians have, there's some pretty common themes that I saw in the systems world. Just the need for improvements in everyday workflows in the office, also some healthcare organization changes, and changes at the policy level as well. Would you like me to share some of the things that we've started to work on here at UC, or would that be helpful?
Yes, that very much so.
Okay, so we don't have a formal chief wellness officer or that type of a position. We have a group of people that were interested in improving systems and promoting wellness within the College of Medicine. And there's a neurologist named Jennifer Milano who has a lot of background in this area through her work at the Mayo Clinic and her specialty of neurology. And she got some like-minded folks together for an advisory group. And so this is kind of starting and leading from the middle, really. And from this group, we've developed connections with different organizations throughout our healthcare system and also the College of Medicine. And then we've made a couple of efforts in different areas. So the first kind of thing we did was try to get involved in interacting with different groups, such as the Dean's Office, the Office of Graduate Medical Education, WIMS, or Women in Medicine and Science, and then also trying to get involved in the individual departments throughout the College of Medicine. So all the different academic medical departments. We developed a program where we got the chairs involved, and we were able to nominate wellness champions for every department, so that people could be, looking at from a specialty level, what does their specialty need in particular. And we're also trying to get involved in performance improvement activities. So there's a big push at UC and UC Health to improve processes, make them more efficient and better for our patients and for our team. And we're hoping that we could, take that effort and bring it alongside our effort to increase joy in work as well. Because I think that's where a lot of joy happens, is when systems start to work. We've been able to be part of, either directly or peripherally, with some policy changes, such as a lactation policy, paternity leave. We've been trying to develop some themes of what we do. So some of our themes include communication, care, which is just providing resources for people, connection, so trying to maintain just social networks and a sense of community. And then also commitment to providing, resources and leadership in different areas. And then finally, celebrating. So just celebrating good things instead of always focusing on struggles. On the communication part, we're having each department, each wellness champion, kind of share out what they're doing in their department. And this provides a lot of ideas for people in terms of increasing wellness. On the care aspect of things, we've developed a resource page that people can look at for things of just general wellness and resiliency, but also more kind of emergent things like urgent psychiatric care, things like that. Connection, we've been connecting through change facilitation discussions. There's something called Creating Caring Communities, where we've had groups, small groups, get together and share things. We also had mind-body training and mindfulness meditation available. And on the commitment side, we've developed support from the dean. And like I mentioned before, getting each department chair involved by nominating a wellness champion. And we've also incorporated wellness into the faculty development series. And I'll leave like one last thing. On the celebrate part, we've developed some programs around gratitude awards, nominating people for different things, how they contributed, and a Photos of Joy campaign, which got lots of views, where different faculty kind of entered photos of things that bring them joy.
Thank you, Dr. Holliday. I'd love to ask a little bit more. You mentioned about under care, you talked about resources for physicians, and I'd love to hear a little bit that in a little bit more detail.
Okay. On the resource side, we divided them into kind of local, regional, and then state and national resources, mostly around mental health issues. So kind of crisis hotlines, fast track psychiatric evaluations for people who are struggling, that's connected to our Department of Psychiatry and also one of the mental health care organizations in our city. And then there's some, kind of non-emergent local resources, Campus Recreation Center. We have something called the Center for Integrative Health and Wellness, which has a lot of resources. And then a program called Be Well UC, which is kind of like an employee health kind of maintenance program. We also provide resources around like time and task management, professional development resources. And then we've also pointed people out to a kind of a bank of other resources. Like, for example, the AMA Steps Forward program has a lot of resources in it regarding personal resiliency.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I'm going to turn to Dr. Hamama. I'd love to hear about her experience with the system-based initiatives.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I do caveat is it just started thunderstorming in Columbus, so fingers crossed the power stays on, the Wi-Fi doesn't cut out. But I've obviously a family physician. I work at Ohio Health in Columbus, and my clinical practice is at Riverside Family Medicine in our residency program at Riverside, one of the 4 family medicine programs within Ohio Health. And since I've become a faculty member after I graduated residency, my area of scholarly activity was in burnout and in well-being, and really trying to see how we could mitigate burnout in our learners. And it was a huge passion of mine, one, because I saw my classmates struggling. Myself, I struggled with postpartum depression after I had my first baby when I was chief resident. I had a really challenging time getting back to work and feeling connected when I got back to work, to the work that I was doing, and feeling the stigma of dealing with something like postpartum depression. It wasn't something that we talked about. And I didn't graduate that terribly long ago from residency, but it definitely wasn't something that you felt comfortable sharing with your classmates, with your team, that you were going through that. And so I really wanted to think about how we could change that within graduate medical education, and really started researching what was out there. And a lot of the literature, as you alluded to, Dr. Krebs, was around that idea of personal resilience, right? So mindfulness courses, or incorporating yoga, or the things that felt very you-focused. And but that was what was in the literature, and so we tried some of those things within our GME department, and we have multiple programs at Riverside, and they didn't work, right? Our burnout scores actually got worse. And having some conversations with the residents, and what I knew deep down is that we had to change the system in which they worked. And I'll never forget a surgery resident telling me, there's no yoga class and there's no mindfulness course that's going to change the fact that I did 30 consults when I was on call last night. It's like, no, you're absolutely right. And so it was at that time that we really took that system-based approach. So how do we provide a culture where if you are burnout and you are in distress, you can get to those resources that we have and feel safe accessing them? And then 2, how can we fix the environment that you're in? And so in graduate medical education, we had a little bit more ability to really dig in and look at things like call schedules and office staffing and right sizing of the programs, and really looking at the size of the services and things like that. But that work really started to pick up steam. Other teams in the hospital, pharmacy, and other departments were interested in learning what we were doing. And so really creating a framework in which you can look at that environment. You can find those things that are really driving burnout and take a really quality improvement, process improvement approach to fixing them, all with the mitigating factor of what does this do to our people. So the work grew to include all of Ohio Health, and I currently moved from being full-time faculty and program director of the program, and now I'm the senior medical director over well-being. So we're really looking at all of Ohio Health, and we have 13 care sites, different hospitals, and 30,000 some associates and providers that we're working through. How can we create at a team level, right, a department, a practice level, the framework where you can identify those drivers and solve those problems, and really help with the administrative burden, the workflows in your practice that are very specific to your practice, so that you maintain that level of autonomy that's so important as a physician, but then also really kind of fix those things. As much as we wish we could fix our payer system right now, there's a lot of things we could at least change in our own practices to really provide a lot of relief to our teams. And then additionally, how do we create that culture where it's safe to reach out for help, where you don't feel like there's a stigma associated with it, working both at the state level and trying to advocate for programs like the One Bright program, right, to be very inclusive and stop some of the questions on medical licensure, but then also, with our own internal resources, our provider well-being team that we have, how do we get people connected early before they're in crisis? And so those are some of the things that we're working through right now to really change that culture and make it okay to say things aren't okay, and let's dig in and fix it, whether it's something personally you're dealing with or something, in your personal practice that we need to change.
Thank you, Dr. Hamam. And I really appreciate your openness about your experiences. That's really powerful, because you're right. There absolutely is a stigma, unfortunately, both, sharing with others. And then we also all, a lot of physicians have always said, I'm scared of the medical board,
Yep.
and they want to get help, but are worried that it's going to have other repercussions. And so and I appreciate the Ann Spicer and the rest of the OAFP staff's advocacy there. So one of the things I'd love Dr. Hamam and Dr. Holliday's opinions on. So I always think physicians are darn resilient people. We've all gotten through college. We generally had pretty good grades. We did the MCAT. We did volunteering and activities and all kinds of stuff. Then we did 4 years of med school, which is not easy. And we did long calls and sleepless nights and studying for exams. And then we did 3 years of residency, which is, working 30-hour shifts often. We're delivering babies. We're doing all hours. We're taking some super hard tests, and we've got people's lives in our hands. So I don't think the problem is that physicians aren't resilient people. I mean, the problem might be even we're too resilient, and that the system, I think a lot of it's the system is the problem. And Dr. Hamam, you mentioned that, all the yoga in the world is not going to fix that I did 30 consults. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and if you have any ideas of how we can fix the system.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great point, and it's kind of like the problem that we're all trying to solve right now. And I think to the first point about, are we too resilient? You're right. There is no one more resilient than someone who's made it through residency and medical school, right? Like, we've figured it out. But what we also haven't figured out very well is how to deal with that cumulative stress and that cumulative trauma that builds up over time. So think about all of the times that you were involved in a code in training. What happened after the code? You took your next page, right? There was no time to kind of process what you saw or what you witnessed. And so I do think there is that part of medicine that we haven't figured out and we're not great at yet, in terms of how we can deal with the emotional, private, right, privileged moments that we have with patients. And you think about the days when you come home from practice and what you've heard and what you've witnessed. We often don't take the time to process that. We just we think we leave it at the practice, but really you carry that with you. And there's probably many patients that you can think back to exact conversations and exact moments that maybe could be triggering a trauma response or anxiety or a medical malpractice case, whatever you've been involved with. So I do think there's something that we haven't figured out yet and that we really need to think systemically how we can really bring in and be okay with processing those really challenging situations we've been a part of. So I think that's the one thing that I don't think we've done a great job at figuring out yet. However, right, how do we lean in and fix the system that makes it okay for us to have 30 consults overnight, or double book and double book and double book to the point where we cannot see and spend that time with the patients to give them the care that we feel that they need. And so I think as much as physicians can get involved in administrative roles and leadership, right, like we have the time to do that, but the more that we can really get involved in those decisions and be at the tables where those decisions are being made, so it doesn't feel like they're being made for us, that we're part of it, I think is such a vital part. And it's not something I recognized early on in my career. I was like, I don't have time for that. I have my patients, I have my residents, I have things to see. But carving out that time to be at that committee meeting or submit your ideas is so vital, because we are the ones practicing medicine. We know how to do it best, right? Like, we're the ones. And so when those decisions are taken out of our hands and we feel like we've lost control, I think that really leads to a lot of distress. And then I think really returning to the roots, we're family doctors. Like, we know people and systems and communities. And so how can we really apply that idea of how we connect resources and how we connect patients and think of them holistically to our own practices? I think family docs have have an advantage over other specialties in being able to navigate those really big system problems because we do it every day for our patients. So if we can translate that same approach to solving those problems, I think we can go a long way to really helping our practices work the way we want them to, and to really relieve some of that burden that we're under every day.
That's some great points, Dr. Hamam. Thank you. Made me think of a couple of things. You're absolutely right. You know, sometimes we forget that we're people too. And, you know, if we're giving somebody bad news about something, sometimes that does hit home, and that's really hard. And we often don't have a minute to just process and take a breath. And actually reminded me of, I think it was like my second month of internship, and I was doing an LP on a 4-month-old. And during that, the 4-month-old stopped breathing. And I called a code, and, you know, the whole hospital comes running. And when she was, you know, everybody else was there and I was able to step out, I remember just crying. And the only people around me were med students to give me a hug. And, you know, I mean, and that's not great for them either, you know, but on the other hand, maybe it is because they see that we're human too. But, you know, I just kept getting paged. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to return these pages, you know, while I'm doing all of this. And, you know, I felt like it was a weak thing of weakness, which is really ridiculous because when I look at it now, it's like, okay, I'm human. You know, of course, this 4-month-old who almost died, that is traumatic, you know, and, you know, there's some kind of something wrong with you if you don't have a little bit of heart, you know, something there. So a lot of really good points. Dr. Holliday, do you have any other insights?
I'm muted, sorry. I've done some work looking at opportunities for system-based change, and the pattern that I saw was were a few. One, there's a great opportunity for frontline physician leadership. It seems that when there are frontline leaders who are really invested in, you know, making sure that people are doing okay, you know, looking at what their goals are, you know, seeing that they have open lines of communication so that they don't feel that there's a stigma to bring up if they're, you know, struggling with the systems issue or whatever. That seems to be very helpful. Another one is supporting individuals' kind of goals. You know, what makes work meaningful for them. There's an interesting statistic that if you allow, this is a study of academic physicians, but if you allow an academic physician to have 20% of their time allotted to something that they feel is professionally meaningful, this cuts the risk of burnout by quite a lot. And you don't actually get more for the investment if you go over 20%. So it's as little as 20% of the time. So if you can match you know, a hospital systems or a department's needs with, let's say, a niche area that someone's passionate about, that can be protective, again, because the issue is not that, you know, we can't work hard or whatever. It's more that if we're doing things that seem meaningless, or we don't have adequate resources, that's when things get difficult. The other areas that are, I think, open for change are looking at team-based care. So we know that it takes too much time to get everything done that people need in a patient care panel, and that's why, like, you know, roughly half of stuff gets done if you look at Medicare utilization studies. So we know that we have to have team-based care. We also know that patients need not only teams to function within a given office, but also the medical neighborhood as well. So more integrated system so that we can take care of patients' needs. Another issue is that for every, you know, local area, and this is probably the first opportunity for people to make some changes, both for themselves as individual physicians as well as frontline leaders, is to look at the everyday annoying things that just make life hard. I think the Institute for Healthcare Improvement call these the pebbles in the shoe. So you think about what's meaningful, and you think of what are the little things that just get in the way every day. Is there some way that we could kind of take away some of those little paper cuts that make us bleed by the end of the day? And then finally, there are bigger, not pebbles, but more boulders, and these tend to be around areas such as, you know, getting the support needed for team-based care, because that has to do with training and staffing. and also more integrated systems, and then reducing clerical burden. And that clerical burden could be areas of EHR optimization, which that's huge. And then also looking at the workflow processes that are involved in just doing the paperwork that we have to do. So prior auths, DME ordering, things like that. So it's a lot of work to be done on an individual level, whether it's taking care of yourself or engaging with programs that have been mentioned here today, all the way to the the local office things that need to change, and then at the healthcare system, and then finally at the the policy level, state and national. So a lot of stuff to be done, and I know everyone else on this call would probably agree with me that it is just you just hammer away a little bit every day, and even if it's small little changes, I get joy out of it. If I see that one little annoying thing has gotten better, or a fellow physician felt comfortable enough to reach out to me and just kind of say that they were really bummed out about something, that fills me with joy. That gives me meaning to what we're doing.
Absolutely. I think we definitely need to look at any successes. We're so used to focusing on failures and what's going wrong. And, you guys mentioned gratitude and being grateful for the things that are going right and improving. So I appreciate those insights. We have a question from a listener, Dr. Mike Sevilla from Salem Family Practice. He asks, any suggestions on how to deal with colleagues and or administrators who want to keep the status quo in your health system? Thanks, Mike, for that question. Do either of our guests have thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Yeah,
yeah.
I know. It's challenging, right? Because it's sometimes it feels easier to just keep things as they are, and it can be overwhelming to think about changing everything. So I love what Dr. Holliday said about those small things, right? And how can you create a sense of urgency and what our health system, we talk about all the time, a return on investment, about a small change. And a lot of times that return on investment can be anything from improved engagement, right? That your docs are more tuned in and they are excited about coming to work every day, to patient satisfaction. So I think there's a million different ways that we measure and that the well-being of our physicians directly impact those scores and those metrics, right, that we're monitoring. And so I think as much as you can present things as an opportunity and not a complaint, I think is really helpful. And if you can think about what can this change really bring to this practice, how can this improve patient care? I think that goes a lot farther than just saying, like, I don't like this and it's terrible, please fix it, right? Like, if you come with a solution and an idea and what the potential positives are, I think I've found it at least far more helpful.
I think that's a great point. And just to touch on what you said in terms of trying to align efforts in an organization like our wellness advisory group with efforts that are already ongoing. I mean, no one's trying to scheme to make life miserable for anybody. I mean, and many times people are trying to make things better. And a lot of improvement efforts, they help both the patient and the team and the organization all at the same time. So, for example, team-based care and workflows that are more efficient, we know that these help team member satisfaction, they improve patient satisfaction and outcomes, and they also decrease burnout. So there's opportunities to kind of do things that are not just, we're not just trying to have a cushy place for the burnout docs to hang out. I mean, that's not what this is about. This is about doing meaningful work, and it just so happens that what physicians feel is meaningful is actually good patient care and integrated healthcare systems, and it's things that other people benefit from as well. I think you can also mention the urgency just in being, the presenteeism. If you have a doc that's not all there and struggling, we know that safety and patient satisfaction can suffer, and also impact on other staff members. I know Miami doesn't want to work with a grumpy me. And then there's other costs too, just in terms of replacing one primary care physician. It's a ton of money to replace a primary care physician who's been lost to burnout.
Yeah,
Great,
I totally
great
agree.
points. I'm gonna. Oh,
I was just gonna say too, right? I love that idea of like multiple benefits from one project, and you even think personally too, right? If you're improving, colon cancer screening, for instance, right? That's going to benefit your patients, it's going to benefit your practice, your reimbursement, and then get your maintenance of certification credit with it too, right? I mean,
Right.
you don't have to have 18 projects, right, to really improve one thing, and I think that's so important. To hone in and focus, and you can make a huge difference with one thing.
absolutely. And I think it's also provides some personal or professional satisfaction. If you see that your colon cancer screening numbers have gone up significantly, it makes you feel good. It makes you say, hey, all this hard work I'm doing is paying off. And I think a lot of times when we're frustrated, it feels like we're doing a lot of work and we're not seeing the good come out of it. And so, I think a lot of us can do a lot of work if we're seeing some benefit, and a lot of times we're not. So that's, I think, one of the things that leads to it. And the other thing, in terms of Dr. Sevilla's question on the status quo, I'm going to say the last 18 months are anything but the status quo. Even before 2 years ago, we were still talking about burnout. Dr. Holliday and Dr. Hamam and I probably were all seeing oodles of patients, doing tons of messages, tons of notes, on call, all of these things, just like you all have been doing. But then add in all of COVID. So now we've got to worry about, do we have enough PPE? We now have a bunch of issues with educating our staff, educating patients about, they have more questions of, hey, I have this vacation plans. Is it safe for me to go? Or should I get the vaccine? Or my family and friends won't get the vaccine. Can I hug them? Like all these extra questions and all of this extra fear. And then we all have, there's also extra mental health issues from our patients. I can't imagine, I assume Dr. Hamam and Dr. Holliday, you've seen a lot more mental health since COVID started. Patients who I thought who've been stable with anxiety for years, are now a lot worse. And they're struggling with, how do I homeschool my children? Or do I homeschool my children? And how do I take care of, what about my family member in the nursing home? So they're all stressed with all these things. We're trying to vaccinate people. A lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about the vaccine. And then we also have other issues. For instance, I have a colleague who was telling me yesterday how stressed he was because he has one staff out on vacation. He has 2 staff out with COVID, one other that might be out with COVID. And so basically he has like 1 medical assistant for 3 docs. Like that just doesn't work, So that sounds like a recipe for burnout. I mean, I cringed when I heard it. I'm guessing some of you might have too. So we can't deal with the status quo. We're not in the status quo. Things were already rough before all of this, and then add all this on. And then you're also learning telehealth. I mean, I'd never had done telehealth before, or, COVID. Dr. Hamama, Dr. Holliday, had you done telehealth prior?
No, it was a rapid education.
So you're, doing all of that. And then, it's a whole different way of thinking, when you can't just listen to the, you can't just put your stethoscope onto the patient, or, do I need to bring them in? Is it worth the risk of, exposure? And make sure you're wearing your mask, over your mouth, and dispelling mist. So there's a lot of other things. So we're not in the status quo. So something's going to need to change because physicians otherwise aren't going to be able to do it. And we need this more now than ever. I want to ask Dr. Hamam and Dr. Holliday, you both mentioned the importance of physician leadership. So I'm betting we have some folks out there who are watching who are interested in this and say, hey, I do want to get involved. How do they do that? How do you recommend somebody who's not in leadership start to get their toes in and be more involved?
I'll let you start, Dr. Holliday.
Okay, good. Well, I think a good place to start would be to talk to leadership in your department. So it could be a medical director in our office, if we have someone who's in the local office, or maybe a medical director of a healthcare system. letting them know that this is a passion of yours. Please, link me up to any efforts that are getting started, because chances are there's something going on in this area. And I know, I'm in an academic setting, so getting in touch with the department chair, things like that. And then I think the next step is to just plan on, leading from the middle, because that's what this is about, really. Like everything, we need champions to get started, because the vast majority of folks, it's really hard for them to get involved because they have a lot of crazy stuff happening, and maybe they're working on something else, and they really can't commit to making any change until they see that there's some incentive and they have the ability to maybe get involved in some of these changes. So we really need a small number of champions to get started. So, and this could be someone who's maybe passionate about, EHR optimization, or someone who's quite passionate about making sure we have adequate resources for women in medicine and families. So there's a lot of opportunities. I would try to make connections and pick something that you're passionate about, that you want to get involved with.
Dr. Hamam, what are your thoughts?
I agree, and it's something that I think as a physician, right, you're already viewed as a leader of your healthcare team, and so a lot of the skills, particularly in family medicine, that you've learned have set you up for success to be a natural leader. And I think one of the things that always intimidated me, particularly about these kind of systemic changes, was talking about policy and how can you get involved with policies, whether it's your parental leave policy, or maybe at state level, or maybe it's, even a bigger healthcare policy than that. And I think that to me was very intimidating. And what I realized is that how frequently there isn't a physician leader kind of giving input, right? And our teams are looking for that. So whether it's the OAFP or the AAFP, or I sit on a national behavioral health committee now, and it's been surprising to me how infrequently, right, they had that clinician lens, they had that physician lens looking at things. And so although the time commitment isn't actually great, it's less than an hour a month that I help, kind of guide national behavioral health care policy and access to behavioral health, but it's just that input. They want that physician lens. You're not writing the policy. I'm not, I'm not lobbying for it, right? But just providing that extra set of eyes and lens, and it's a small time commitment, but it really does make a huge difference. And although it seems very intimidating, right, there's a lot of folks out there doing it, and they just need your insight. And as a physician, that's so important.
I was thinking of one of the, I'm so sorry. I was thinking of one other thing is just as the idea of physician as a natural leader. If some of our docs who are listening now, if they find themselves in a office staff meeting, and they may want to advocate for ways that they could increase team-based care and streamline workflows in their office, if they could be part of those efforts. Because that's a challenge. Change is difficult for people, and we really do need physician champions for that type of very local work, again, to get the pebbles out of the shoe. So trying to figure out what is annoying the heck out of the staff, the patients, the physicians, and how can we improve these a little bit as we go along.
Yeah, I love that. And just, talking about the status quo, right? Like, we know normal, right, didn't really work for us because it wasn't working before, and it got us to where we are now. So this is kind of the opportunity that's ripe for change. And it sounds exhausting to some degree, but I actually find this time of unsettlement a little bit exciting, because it is allowing us to think, this didn't work, so we have to do it differently. And so what can that look like? And it could be something as small as changing your check-in process in the office to make things work a lot more smoothly, to how you order labs. It could be something, little, but that adds up, a few minutes every day on every patient adds up to something dramatic for you. So this is that time, because we don't know what the future holds, to just really think out of the box and let's do things a lot differently, because things weren't perfect pre-COVID, like you mentioned.
Absolutely. And I think getting your staff involved, asking them what bothers them, what are the pebbles in their shoe, because it might also be the pebble in your shoe. Like I've been at places where it's like getting people from check-in to a room just feels like a act of Congress, and it takes forever and it slows everything down, and patients are annoyed and staff's annoyed and you're annoyed and but I'm not probably the best person to know how to solve that. Like ask the medical assistant, ask the front desk, what are the annoyances? And maybe they're doing extra stuff that doesn't really need to be done, or maybe the computer needs to be set differently. I don't know, but getting the opinions of all your staff is really helpful. And also one other thing in the topic of leadership is, I agree. Physicians are natural leaders, but also leadership is a skill. And the more we develop that skill, the better we are and the more comfortable and confident we'll be. And one of the ways I have developed my leadership skills is a lot of the OAFP activities, going to represent the OAFP at AAFP events, NCCL, National Conference of Constituency Leaders, which OAFP is always looking for people to, that's a great way to get involved. There's lots of committees and work groups and resource teams. So lots of great activities and ways to get involved. And then the other thing, that's the official way, but the unofficial benefit is, a lot of times you meet people who often can help mentor you, give you advice. And I think a lot of times might have other, we're all dealing with similar problems. I'm sure the things in my practice and Dr. Hamam's practice and Dr. Holliday's practice, a lot of the problems we're dealing with are very similar. And what you're dealing with in your practice is probably very similar. But maybe Dr. Hamam has some great idea that she has solved, a problem of, patients getting educated on their referrals, and she tells me, I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? Let's do that. Because I'll tell you, initially, my previous practice partners used to always gripe about covering for me when I would go to conferences. And then they noticed I was always smarter when I came back because I always had some good idea from somebody that I stole from some other family doc. And so I think that's another huge advantage is, you might want to get involved, but you're like, I don't have the ideas. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to solve these problems. But you might be at a meeting and somebody else has a solution, or you might tweak that solution. So I think getting involved in the academy is really helpful in both developing leadership skills and that networking, which really can help mentor and give you ideas.
There's also a resource packet that was prepared for this week, which has a lot of great resources to go to, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And they've been kind of sectioned off into kind of personal care type things, but also system-based changes in different arenas. I would also recommend, if in your practice you're not huddling yet, that would be a great place to start, is to be a champion of getting huddle started. And there's some resources you can look to do that in a way that gets your group engaged. Because sometimes if we don't engage the people who are going to participate in the activity, it just kind of dies on the vine.
Absolutely. And remember, there's that whole plan, do, study, act. If you start doing something and it's not working for you, you're not committed to doing it for forever. You try something, give it a chance, and it either will work or maybe it partially works and you make some tweaks. So, jumping in with that idea, if you're not doing huddling, that's a great way to do it, or a great way to start. And asking, what are the pebbles in everyone's shoes? Like, for instance, one of the big things I'm working on is prior authorization. I think we all hate prior authorization. I know no one who ever has said anything good about it besides insurance companies. So I work for Cohere Health, and we're trying to decrease administrative burden. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to make the prior authorization process as smooth and transparent as possible. Because one of the things I'm always like, tell me what the rules are. If I don't know what the rules are, I can't meet them. But if you tell me the rules, I can figure it out. And so trying to educate physicians and practices on what they actually are. And it's a small way, but I think anytime we can look at how, what are these pebbles in the shoes? And I know I can't fix it as one person, but we all can jump in and make a dent somewhere.
Absolutely.
And any other, and I would love to also just hear what Dr. Hamama and Dr. Holliday do from a personal wellness standpoint. I know we talked a lot about systems-based, but I would love to hear what you guys do to take care, try to keep yourself well and promote wellness yourselves.
No, absolutely. I think it is such an important, it's so easy to lose yourself in medicine, right? And lose the things that bring you joy and meaning outside of work. And one of the newest terms that I've enjoyed that's come out of the last year is this idea of languishing. So it's not quite burnout, but it's just this idea of like nothing's great, but nothing's bad. I'm not burnout. And the way to move out of that is kind of to find those moments of like immersion where you can get lost in something. And it's hard to do that in your practice sometimes. When you get lost in a patient encounter, then you have a bunch of other patients waiting for you. So you can't really kind of lose track of time the same way you would at things that you do, outside of your work. And so, in addition to my kids and my husband and my dogs that, all bring a lot of joy, right? We love to bike ride. We love to hike in all of the amazing metro parks around Central Ohio are one of our favorite things to do. I became the pandemic gardener and it just kind of took off with landscaping and houseplants and those types of things that you can just lose focus on. And I think the other thing too that's been really important for me is keeping that idea of gratitude and what's going well front of mind, because our brains are very easily hardwired to find the negative in everything. It's how we're trained, right? We rule out cancer, we rule out a PE, we rule out a heart attack. And so we tend to do that with everything as physicians. And so we have to kind of change that mindset to remember and reflect on the positive. And so both through, either journaling or through keeping my 3 good things at night that go well, has really helped me find those moments of joy over the last few years. And then I'm also a big fan of coaching. And so either group coaching or individual coaching has been very helpful to keep me in that positive growth mindset rather than kind of stuck in the everything is awful that you could have easily gone to many times the past 2 years.
Thank you, Dr. Hamama. And Dr. Holliday?
Yeah, for myself, I've got a wife, 4 kids. They're a little bit older, 18 to 24 now. And then I've got an older dog and a very young puppy. We're finally getting sleep now, which is good. I'd like to do little hobbies that I think it's already been mentioned before that get me engrossed and help me not feel like a doctor. So I like to roast coffee and I like to play the drums and things like that. I think what else? I think that's about it.
Thank you. And I think from professional, I think doing a lot of different activities. I love teaching because I think there's something really exciting about an first, second, third year med students all excited and seeing what we do. And it gives you a nice fresh perspective. And, doing talks or other things, keeps things interesting. Non-medically, I love to spend time with my family, and we've got a farm and dogs and lots of animals, and that is always fun, and guitar and hiking and writing and things like that. So I think it's really important to make time for those fun activities that kind of keep us ourselves and regenerate and recharge. So I really want to just thank Dr. Hamama and Dr. Holliday for sharing their expertise with us and their experiences. I think I know I've learned a lot. Hopefully you have too. And I also want to thank the OAFP staff who puts all this together. So really appreciate all that. And thank you to all of you for listening in. For anyone who wasn't able to join live, the session is being recorded and will be shared on the Wellness Week webpage, as well as OAFP Facebook and YouTube pages. And here are a few quick reminders about the remainder of the week. Please take part in the Wellness Week Challenge to focus on physical activity and gratitude each day. If you submit your Wellness Week tracker by August 20th, you have a chance of winning an OAFP logo item. More info in your daily emails. If you're craving some connection with other family physicians, please join us at the Family Medicine Party hosted by the OAFP Foundation this Friday at 7 o'clock. We're recognizing the Philanthropist of the Year and Mentor of the Year, as well as adding some friendly competition with trivia. Registration is required, but it is free to attend. Tomorrow's theme is mental wellness and emotional health. We will have another live session at 3 o'clock with experts from Ohio Physicians Health Program. Catch it live here on Facebook and YouTube. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Stay well and be well, and thanks for everything you do. You are not alone.